challenge the champions.
What did you say?
He said, we
I heard what he said.
Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animated features not made by Disney. I'm your host, Octaviano Macias, and today I'll be talking about something relating to the big game that's coming up. Yeah, the Super Bowl. People are playing football, and I'm watching a football movie. The Aardman animated feature, Early Man. Yes, I know that's technically a different kind of football movie, but it's football. I know that there's American football, which is what Super Bowl is the Super Bowl is doing, but I don't know. I thought this would be a funny joke, alright? So, yeah, I'm doing a football movie, but specifically what we Americans call soccer. Whatever. You know what? It's a good movie regardless. So, Early Man is basically a whole lot of things, but also very generic. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes being generic helps and telling whatever story you're trying to tell. And in this case, it certainly helps. Looking at the images of this movie, you'd assume it's basically a movie about cavemen, which it technically is. It's a movie about these cavemen who are pretty much being run out of their place by the Bronze Age, because it's pretty much at that point where the Bronze Age has already started, and these are like the last remaining cavemen around, so to speak. And what ends up making this a football movie, and just to be clear, I'm going to be calling it football because that's what they call it in the movie. I know technically us Americans call it soccer, but look, be respectful to their cultures, and technically speaking, when it comes to my Mexican background, we call it football too, so whatever. Pretty much football comes into play because you have the bronze people who are very obsessed with football, because football is a very popular sport, and you have pretty much the person who's taking over the place, Lord Noof, is like, okay, I'll let you keep your land if you win a football game against us. But really, it's just a money-making scam to him. So the young caveman who agrees to this, Doug, is like, okay, because he realizes that a bunch of cave paintings that they previously thought were them hunting rabbits was actually them playing football. So there you go, the Donna Man playing football. Now it turns out that the cavemen are playing football against the Bronze Age, and there you go. It sounds like a very weird setup, but trust me, it's a very common setup. It's pretty much every sports movie you can think of in terms of them trying to save a place that's being run over. I mean, that's kind of movie 101. That's one of the most common plot lines of anything. But in terms of them playing the game, it's like, okay, so you got the ragtag team of losers. You got an animal that eventually plays the game, which would be the main character Doug's pig, which is Hognob. And then it turns out that he's also the secret weapon of the team, so it's not only the whole animal playing the sport, but also that whole trope of, oh look, at the last minute someone comes in to save the game. I'd say spoilers, but realistically, even if I didn't, you'd know where this was going right from the get-go. I mean, there's a lot of good jokes, and I won't be spoiling those, but you'd know where it was going right from the beginning, the second you know the whole plot line. You got the snooty rival, who's Lord Noof, pretty much the guy who's trying to run him out. Eventually, one of the people from the other side, from the Bronze Age side, decides to join up with the caveman because she wants to play the game, because girls aren't allowed to play the game. So you got that whole plot line too. And, you got the underdogs. Eventually, some stuff happens that causes the main character to lose faith, but then the team rallies together and they win the game, and all is one. And it's everything that you've ever heard of, you got it in here. And again, that's not a bad thing. A lot of movies work because of that stuff, and you can tell that they're kind of playing it with being a tongue-in-cheek in this. A lot of this does come off as, okay, yeah, we're doing this in a way to mess around with what play around with it, and it's great. It's fine. It's definitely a funny movie. It works. I do like the performances in it. You got Eddie Redmayne in possibly the only role I've ever seen him that he's likable, as Doug, and I don't want to, disrespect the dude. I mean, I don't know how he is. Maybe he's nice, maybe he's not. Realistically, it's just almost every movie that I've ever seen him in, I just do not like. And, that's not his fault. I mean, obviously, I haven't seen all of his movies, but the Harry Potter movies that he's in, don't care. Jupiter Ascending, don't care. Yeah, I just don't care for a lot of the movies I've seen him in, and I'm sure he's been in other good stuff. It's just I've never seen that, so that's just my take on that. But here he's doing a really good voice with Doug. But the real scene stealer is the villain of the movie, Lord Nuve, who's played by Tom Hiddleston, the guy who plays Loki. And yeah, again, this is just a perfect example of getting a celebrity to do voice work, because it's like, he's amazing in it, and like honestly, it's a really great performance. Like you can't even really tell it's him until you're told it's him. He's just delivering it that perfectly, and a lot of it is just that funny. Like every scene he's in, he's always stealing it. He's playing like this really pompous, greedy, selfish lord. Like he even badmouths the queen. And it's pretty much just selfish. It's that kind of character. He's the snooty rival in the sports movie, but it's great because Hiddleston just sells it. It's just a really funny performance, and along the way you get just other great jokes, like with the caveman. They're all pretty much like the random assortment of people that you would expect to see with like ragtag groups. Like you got the mama's boy, you got the mother too, so that's kind of funny that you got the mother in the team, and she's really like the cougar, like boy hungry kind of mom. So that's kind of funny. You got the old man who's pretty much Doug's mentor, played by Timothy Spall. Like he's like the chief of the group, and he gets some funny moments too. He gets probably my favorite line in the movie, which involves something about I don't want to give it away, but it involves pretty much his age. Like pretty much, if you know anything about people, how old they usually lived back then in the caveman days. There's a great joke that overlaps with like the age of what you would expect most athletes to be. So that's a really good one. It's pretty much like him talking about his age. You'll see it, and you'll know what I'm talking about, but it's a really funny one. There's also like a love interest in this. It's the girl, and she's fine. I mean, they never go too far, like whether like in terms of the romance, they never go too far into it. It's just kind of like, okay, so she's pretty much the girl, and you get some cute moments, but nothing too special. But yeah, that's pretty much what the movie is. It's every sports movie you can think of, but now it's caveman, and they're saving their land against the Bronze Age. Sounds weird, but you get a pretty generic movie out of it, and again, it's not a bad one. It's a really good one. In terms of Aardman, I'd say it's probably one of their weaker features, but I mean, you're talking about Aardman here, so that's pretty high mark. It's honestly, yeah, like I said, one of the weaker features, but it's still a really good one. I got a lot of laughs out of it. I mean, realistically, the only real issue I have with the movie is that since it is following a lot of those tropes, even if it's making fun of it, you do get a sense of it being kind of easy to forget. Like, I wouldn't flat out call this forgettable, because it's not like I haven't thought about any of the jokes or anything since it came out, like back in like 2018 or 2019. But it's one where I'm like, yeah, I don't think of it enough to really it's not one of the ones that comes first to mind. You know what I'm trying to say? It's definitely a worthwhile watch, I'll say that much, but it's not one that you'll think of right away. Even from Aardman, which has a small selection, you'll probably go for Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run, or Shaun the Sheep first before you go to this one. I don't know if I'd say it's their weakest one. I feel like that probably goes to Flushed Away, which isn't even a bad movie. But yeah, it's definitely on the weaker end. But again, I really like it. I mean, it's a really good sports movie. It's it's cute. It's definitely one that I'm like, hey, yeah, if you need a good sports movie, there you go. If you need to watch something for the big game, I mean, technically it's the wrong sport, but you know what? They're talking about football, and it's still a good movie. And realistically, whether it's this or American football or any of those, I mean, if we're being completely honest, the tropes are pretty much the same. I mean, if you've seen stuff like, Air Bud, which is like a basketball thing, you'll get, at least one or two tropes that was in here. So it's like, you can really like mix and match, and it'll make the smallest amount of difference. It's just a matter of what game they're playing. Which I feel like I'm insulting sports with that, but I'm really not. I mean, I respect that, and it's cool, if you're into that stuff. I'm not really too deep into it, but, it's definitely something where it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a good subject to make movies out of, and there has been some really good ones on that. This one, I would say, definitely fits alongside with it. I mean, like I said, there's just some really good jokes on it regarding, like, the stuff from the game or just stuff from the tropes. Yeah, it's not like it's an incredibly deep movie, which is the biggest weakness. It's not something that truly hurts it, because, I mean, not every movie needs to be something that's incredibly deep. Sometimes fun is fun, and that's all I'm really asking for. I don't know what is this desire from people to have, like, stuff where it's, like, life-changing, or if, it'll hit, like, all the stuff that they consider for great movies, and it's like, I mean, it's fine if you get that, but, every now and then we need a break, and, not that this is a junk movie, but, it's more akin to a junk film than it is a high art film, it's not something where I'm gonna pop in every year to watch. It's gonna be something where it's like, yeah, if I'm in the mood, if I feel like, watching something with sports, or, if there's like a big game going around, not necessarily just football. That was mainly my joke, but like, I don't know, maybe when the World Cup is on, that this will be a fun one to just get into that mood. And I mean, realistically, why complain about that? It's a solid, cute movie about underdogs winning a game of football. But yeah, like, you get some really good jokes out of this. Like, amongst the cavemen, you get a whole thing where early on you get this, one of the cavemen is literally just a rock with, like, not even a face painted onto it. It's just, at most, like, a little line just to kind of signify, like, the happy face. And, I mean, what ends up happening with that, really great stuff. There's a whole gag with, when you see the cavemen, like, in the Badlands, because they get kicked out of their land. So there's like, okay, here's like a bunch of volcanoes and stuff, like, it's very rough. And you see like this little duck, but it then turns out to be like a giant duck. And, yeah, there's a lot of great jokes done with that giant duck. The Hognob character, the little pig, gets a few jokes. I mean, he's no Gromit in terms of animal sidekicks, but, he's a very cute one. And I do like the eventual result of him essentially filling in the two roles of the animal team player and the team player that comes in at the last minute to save the game. That stuff is great. Overall, it's not really one that I can truly dig deep into, which I don't know if this will make for a shorter episode or one of the shortest. I'm trying to at least fill in some stuff, because I can't really think of too much on this. Like, I remember when this was announced, it was like announced, like, okay, we're doing this to kind of promote, I guess, the World Cup. I don't know if it was officially like a tie-in or just something they felt like doing. There's not really much I could say on that regards. I mean, it works. It's whether it was a promotional thing or not, it's fine. It's a good sports movie. Yeah, I don't think there was really much. I mean, not that there wasn't a struggle. I know that technically every film has their own little struggles, but from the most that I know, it's just, the typical thing with stop motion animation. It was announced years in advance, and it took years to make, because stop motion is a really long process, which something I always respect. I mean, I personally love to do stop motion, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I can do anywhere between 5, maybe even 10 years, because some of these take years just to make, and it's like, I don't know if I have that patience, but if I ever get the chance, I mean, it'd definitely be something that I'd be curious to try out, just because, I mean, it's creative. Like, at most, I've only ever done, like, little projects for my college classes, and, I've helped out, one of the guest hosts on here, are now with someone's Lego stuff. Like, not too much, but just enough to where I'm like, okay, yeah, I can see, like, the time-consuming process, and just imagine doing that, but with characters that you have to organically create out of clay or like felt or whatever, and it's like, I don't know if I could do that, but it's definitely interesting. I mean, it's always been one of the more fascinating animation styles to me, at least, because of that. Like, it's definitely one where I'm like, I mean, regardless of how you feel about these things, you got to respect them on that level. Like, the fact that they have patience to bring to life something that might not even be acclaimed. Like, of course this was, well received, but just think of it like, from other movies where it's like, you never know whether you're going to have a good movie or a bad movie, if people are going to like your movie or if they're going to hate your movie. But imagine that, doing that for something where you're going to be spending a good chunk of your life not knowing, like, hey, look, is this 5 years going to be considered a waste because people are going to hate it? Or is it going to be considered a success because people are going to love it? And, I mean, of course, the best way to remedy that is to not care what other people think and just enjoy that you did something creative, because I know sometimes it's more fun to actually do those things than to even witness what it ended up being. I can tell you that from personal experience. Just some of the stuff that I've been a part of in small sets, like nothing too grand, but just something where I've had experience on that, and I'm like, yeah, it might not have been great, but just the experience of doing it maybe might have been a bit of a hassle, but it was still fun to experience, and stuff that doesn't even get made at any point. It was still just fun to see that. So from that perspective, I'm like, it's certainly interesting. And yeah, I mean, I'd imagine that they probably had a lot of fun just doing a sports movie, because, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people who made this are big fans of football. You can tell that there's a lot of love put into that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there was no real interesting tidbits that I've heard regarding the story of making this, and I'm perfectly fine. Not every movie needs, like, this big dramatic story of, like, oh man, they went through some hell just to get it made. So, yeah, I guess I'm kind of wasting time at this point, but, it is what it is. But yeah, Early Man is just a really fun, cute little movie. It's not their best work, and it's not going to be one that you'll probably think of all the time, but you'll think of it every now and then, so it's definitely worth checking out in that respect. It's cute, it's funny. For sports movies, it's well done. I mean, like I said, it perfectly mocks a lot of those tropes, so yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I can really say. So I'll just cut it off here. I feel like I've probably wasted a lot of your time, but hopefully you don't feel it's entirely a waste just because you probably like hearing my voice. I hope. Or, the more important thing, at the very least, I hope I've convinced you to seek out this movie that didn't really get seen by a lot of people, and is just a cute little movie to watch while you're watching, before you watch the big game, or after you watch the big game, or just whenever you feel like watching something sports related. So, I don't know, yeah. Early Man, go watch it. Honestly, just a really cute movie. It's fun. It is what it is, It's just a good time. Thank you for listening. This has been Octaviano Macias, host of I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse. If you enjoyed this, please go over to my YouTube channel and subscribe to SciCam Films. Now, in the event that you want to support me even more, there is the option of Patreon. Now, Patreon is great because it helps me financially, it helps fund this show, it helps me do more, and I want to do more than just what I'm doing here. I would love to do much bigger projects, so if you like this and you want to see more, consider supporting me there. Even if it's just $1, That's great. It's over at www.patreon.com/saicams, SAICAMS, www.patreon.com/saicams. Just go over, support me, or just subscribe to my YouTube channel, whichever one you feel comfortable with, both preferably, but if you just want to do one, that's perfectly fine with me. Thank you for listening again, and I hope to see you next time.
It turns out your tribe were totally crap at football.